Hello again, this is Dr. Jimmy. This is part 6 in my series on the history of Halloween Horror Nights 20 Years of Fear. Part 5 had to be cut short because I was interrupted by a phony call. Yes, I received a phone call that I had to answer. It was a very important call, I had to get that. So part 6 was shorter than usual, only about 9 minutes or so, I think. So that's why it was cut short. However, now we go right into part 6 and continue with the houses of the event of Halloween Horror Nights 20. And I was talking about PsychoScareapy, Echoes of Shadybrook. I was talking about the facade and about the weeds growing in the lawn. And there was bicycles that were lying there locked over. Apparently some teenagers had gone into the house, they were drinking beer and having a bit of a laugh, and they never returned, never emerged. I don't know if they're in the house as victims. I never saw them. They might have been, and I didn't notice. But going in, it's very much set up like the old Shadybrook. You go into the reception area where there's usually a nurse station as you first go in, and the nurse has syringe or scissors or something impaled in her eye. The same characters, only now they're ghastly and ghostly. And as you go through the corridors, a long corridor with windows on both sides, and it's raining and there's people. It's very similar to what we saw last year, except of course this is ancient and decrepit, and all of the people there are like spectral, ghostly patients coming after you, the dead, returned inmates. And the scenes inside the house were a lot of that. You go through the sort of rooms. You have the rooms with the padded cells and all of that, and the ghosts with the ghostly patients. There was one very notable scene, however, that I have to mention. Is very important. A couple of these. One is there was an object on the wall. It was a red button. This was one of the first times they used a guest-activated trigger. You would push the red button, and when that happens, the siren would go off, and this window would slide up, and you would see inside another room. The light would shine, and there in a straitjacket was Jack the Clown himself. There was a mannequin, but still it was Jack. So it was a little homage to Jack, who had been an inmate there once. Was it Jack's ghost, or is it just an cameo appearance? The memory of Jack remains as a part of the asylum, even then. They go through some more, and there's another interesting bit which I think is a reference to another previous icon. You go into a room where there's electroshock therapy going on. It's going on, and there is a patient being electrocuted. It's almost like an electric chair. He's getting the shock therapy, and there is a doctor next to him, a female doctor in a dark kind of business suit, wearing a white lab coat over it with dark hair. And this strange woman is conducting the shock therapy. I'm assuming the ghost of a doctor torturing the ghost of a patient for all eternity. But it's behind a glass, as if it was a one-way mirror. Oh, a two-way mirror, whatever you want to call it. And I couldn't help but notice the dark-haired doctor bear an uncanny resemblance to Mary Agana before she became Bloody Mary. There's a whole copyright issue with Bobby Wiener. They can't bring Bloody Mary back, and they can't directly reference her name. But if this was Dr. Agana, and somehow she made a cameo appearance in this house, which, as I said, Shadybrook seems to be associated with her in a weird way. That was my guess, and I've heard from some scare actors who were in the house that was indeed meant to be Mary Agana, a rather subtle cameo appearance. So that was the house pretty much, as I said. It was, for me, one of the least effectual houses. It was a lot of stuff we'd already seen. The ghostly effects were not that great in this house. There were some other houses that featured ghosts that were far more fantastic, but I love the little bit of homage to previous icons, especially the Jack thing was the best thing in the house, to me. Although, I'm not faulting. There was some sort of a funny thing where you had to ask a scare actor for a spoon. I never got that, or knew who it was I was supposed to ask. But that was some sort of business that one of the scare actors was doing. All right. Going on then, we go to another house in Soundstage 22. And the house in that was Legendary Truth, the Wyandotte Estate. You see, Legendary Truth, although the game was played before the event began, continued during the event in the form of a haunted house. And the idea for this was that many years ago, in a house, the Wyandotte Mansion, located in Cary, Ohio, or near there, a man named Malcolm Wyandotte, a very rich, eccentric, and bizarre debauched-old millionaire, with his wife Lydia, threw a party, a Halloween party on, not Halloween, but Devil's Night, October 30th of 1929. And they invited 13 guests. And somehow they all died. Apparently Malcolm murdered all 13 of his guests and his wife and then committed suicide. And their unquiet ghosts haunt this most haunted house in America. You see. That's the setup. And a group of paranormal researchers, the Spirit Seekers, apparently a renegade splinter cell that broke off from Legendary Truth itself, are conducting their own investigation into this house. So it's not the main body of LT, but the Spirit Seekers who are involved in here. And they have a TV show, very much like Ghost Hunters, and they reference that. In fact, they invited the actual Ghost Hunters, the two guys who are most famous for, I forget their names. They came and they visited that house, and there was even a video of them going through the house, done in a sort of night-like photography that they do for their TV show. So they have that going on, and they see the truck for Spirit Seekers, and they have lots of cameras, and all through the house are wires and things for the shoot, and also for a device. They bring a device with them, just like in Hell House. In fact, the plot line for this is so close to Hell House, I would have to say this is another house, although it's not an IP, they very much follow the plot line and were highly inspired by the novel Hell House that I showed you before from Richard Matheson, and the film The Legend of Hell House, for this little mansion, which has been turned into a bed and breakfast, by the way, but they just can't keep guests there because of all the ghosts. Ooh, scary. They get frightened and they don't want to stay there. And so they're losing money, and they've invited the Spirit Seekers to try to cleanse the house. So they bring this electronic device. It's the same device. It's the one Calvin Thorncastle took, and they went away with it. So now we know where it ended up. It ended up in the Wyandotte estate. And they're going to use it to try to drive the spirits out through electromagnetic waves or something. And apparently it doesn't work. It only makes the ghosts pissed off, and they come after you even more than they used to be. Oh my goodness. So the house is full of unquiet spirits. As you go through the mansion in different rooms, you encounter the ghosts in many scary ways. There's one sad drawback. All the ghosts had the same damn face. They gave them all glowing masks, but they all looked exactly the same, whether it was a man or a woman or a little girl or whatever. It was the same glowing face on all of them. It did glow in the dark and it was quite eerie, but at the same time there was a lack of variety in the facial features. Although if you are spoiler alert, if you do read Hell House or you watch the movie Legend of Hell House, ultimately it turns out that all the spirits in the house are manifestations of Emmerich Velasco. All of them are really one spirit. It's not a whole bunch of spirits. It's only one who's haunting the house, taking many different forms and fooling everybody into thinking. And it could have used an evil cat, though. There was an awesome evil cat in the movie. Unfortunately, no evil cat in the house. That's always a drawback. But it did have something else. There was one other spirit in the house besides the one you keep seeing. And you saw them all over there. They're floating. There was one really wonderful. They had a character on some sort of dolly track, and they have the wallpaper, and the wallpaper looks like it's a solid wall, but it's actually just a screen. And so when this guy goes on the track behind it and he's lit properly, you see this transparent figure floating behind the wall, like somehow it's an apparition rather than a person in the movie. So it's more spectral. That was pretty awesome. And there's also one under the floor, and they have a glass floor, and they have a guy on the track. So as you're walking, suddenly this glowing figure goes right underneath your feet. Oh my God, what's that? So those are really cool effects. They also had, as I said, a couple other spirits in the house besides all of these people you kept encountering in different forms. One of them was Captain Howdy, the demon from The Exorcist, Pazuzu, but that face, that scary demon face that appears almost subliminally in the film, and which Brian Brushwood used to great effect in his shows back in, I think, 2007 and 2008, and then came back in 2010 as well. That was the horrifying ghost face, the scary face, the demon face of Captain Howdy, and you're going into a sort of drawing room, and it's all rather pretty. Then suddenly there's this boom, boom, boom noise, and in the window suddenly flash, flash, flash. This image flashes in front of you, and it's done so that it captures on your eyes. So if you close your eyes, you can still see the face. Oh my God! So that was quite startling and very effective scare in the house. There's another cameo appearance. There's a sort of mirror at the end of a long corridor, and standing in the mirror is a beautiful old, not beautiful, but an old hag, and it's none other than Elsa Strick, the storyteller, and she moves and turns, and she looks for all the world like a holograph. So you have this sort of, not a scare actor, but of a holographic projection almost. They use that in another house as well. The idea, so you have these and it was probably one of those mirror glass reflecting effects rather than a real hologram. There's a word for that. Piper's ghost? That's not it. It's something like that. Someone's ghost. I forget the name of it, but it's a very classic haunted house magic show effect. They use it in the Haunted Mansion at Disney. They have a glass at an angle, and there's actually a mannequin or something moving, or they put a projection on it, but it looks just like there's something floating there or moving there that's transparent and three-dimensional in appearance. So, oh my God, you think it's like some sort of real spirit or a hologram or something. It's really effective. So they did have the cameo of the storyteller and Captain Howdy in that house, and that was good because otherwise all the ghosts, although the effects were rather nifty and the ghosts were rather scary, again there was a certain monotony in their appearance. And then of course you do find the device in another room as you go through it, and there is a sort of going up and going down while you're in the house a little bit, a slight incline, a slight decline. So you're going down into the depths of the house, and you find in this room the device itself. And there was a terrific scare in that room. There's a chair sitting there, and you think it's just a chair, but it turns out to be a scare actor. The chair actually starts to move and gets up after you, and that's great. And then they're chased out by the other ghosts, and that's the end of the house. There was another thing that, again, budgetary reasons, apparently something that was supposed to be in the house that disappeared. There was as I said, you do seem to move up a little bit and then move down again in the house. And I guess moving up was to allow you to be on another level so that they could put a scare actor under you. But then when you go down, there's a light that shines from above, and you're in a long corridor, and there's nothing in it. Nothing scary at all. What's supposed to be in there? And you do get the idea that you're supposed to look up, and there's a bit of a light and a bit of a whooshing noise, but you don't see anything. And there was supposed to be a sort of horrific banshee that was up there, maybe not like a nightingale banshee, they called them banshees, but this was something else, some sort of horrific spirit that would come sliding out of the ceiling and swoop over your head, whatever that was. Whatever it was, they couldn't get it to work properly, or they ran out of budget. Whatever it was, they ended up not using it. And that's sad, because it would have been nifty to see some sort of horrific thing come swooping down on you. Unfortunately, not in the house. So that was Legendary Truth, the Wyandotte Estate. Okay. The fourth house is one of the big signature houses of the event. It was located in Building 79, the Parade Building. And I'm sure I won't be getting through all of this house in this one remaining left of the time I have left on the video, because it was so terrifically huge. This was the retrospective house. This was the 20th anniversary house. It was called Horror Nights, the Hallow'd Past. And basically this was the warehouse that you hear about in the movie, and eventually would be games on the internet set in the warehouse as well. But we'll get to that later, eventually. This is the warehouse from a television commercial, and you go in and you find yourself in this glorious warehouse filled with props. And there are props, like a museum practically, from every single Horror Nights. There's something in there. There's banners from Fright Nights and other hanging up above. There's all sorts of props. There's the Terror Queen's motorcycle. There's the Rat Lady's glass coffin. She's not in it, though. She was supposed to be in it. Originally, the Rat Lady would have actually been in the room with you as you went through the house. But apparently they couldn't get that to, you know, like the Rat Lady used to be in houses back in the earliest years of the event. But this time, they decided ultimately to take the Rat Lady out. So you do see her glass coffin, but she's not in it. There's all sorts of other props, everything you can imagine from all these other years and haunted houses, all sorts of stuff, you know, masks and weapons and scary things and bits and pieces, all as you go through there. And then you start going through scenes. Well, first you go into the vortex tunnel, and it spins around you, and they have all the icons' faces on the vortex tunnel. There's Jack and the storyteller and the usher and the director and the caretaker, and they're spinning around. Of course, you have that disorienting effect of going through the vortex tunnel as it spins around you, and then you're sort of going into actual scenes, into the very thing. After going through another corridor where you might encounter some other creatures from past years. There's Frankenstein, for example. Oh, there's the bear from Scary Tales, except the bear's not moving, he's just glaring out at you. The bear's head is mounted on the wall or something, and other bits and pieces and other characters are in there. But then you start going into scenes from houses, and so they recreated scenes from haunted houses over the years, and these included the haunted houses Frightanic, the SS Frightanic from way back in 1998, Halloween Horror Nights 8, Primal Scream, Dead Exposure from Halloween Horror Nights 18, Reflections of Fear in 2008. From the same year, Body Collectors, Collections of the Past, and Scary Tales Once Upon a Nightmare had their own rooms, and there was also a room representing a scare zone, Treeks and Foons. The scare zone, I believe, from, I think that was from Islands of Fear at Halloween Horror Nights in 2002. The first year it was at IOA. So you have all these rooms you go through, and so it recreates the Frightanic scene, the one where you're in the actual wheelhouse, where the captain of the Frightanic is steering the vessel, and the creepy dead soldier comes out and goes after you. Dead Exposure, of course, the room that was the scariest, where you're in the strobe is going off and you're surrounded by thousands of, seems like thousands of zombies all around you, and some of them are scare actors and some are not, and you don't know which as the strobes go off. Unfortunately, somehow the lighting in here was a little brighter than it was in the original, so that it was easier to see, and that made the effect of the strobing and the getting in your face not quite as horrific as it was in the original house. Body Collectors, they did the wonderful scene, everyone's favorite scene, and that's the medical dissecting theater, where we have all the body collectors up in the rows around you, and performing is one of the body collectors, elegantly dressed, the gentleman with his victim on the table, ripping out the spine, and then everyone claps. Yes. And then you go through some of the antechambers where the guys, the assistants with their masks and are there, like you had in the original house. The scene from Scary Tales was the Alice in Wonderland room, the one with the Mad Tea Party. So you go in that and you see that again. You have the tea party, you have all this crazy lights and neon, and you have Alice on there with the March Hare, the White Rabbit, whichever one it was, I don't remember, one of the bunnies, and she's eating it, pulling its entrails out, and she's all bloody, and she's giggling, and the Mad Hatter comes out, ha! It's tea time. Only this time the Mad Hatter had a mask, like he had in the streets of Asylum, rather than the face, the Mad Hatter that they had in the house back in 2008. Then, Tweaks and Foons, you go into a sort of fun house room with mirrors, and all sorts of silly noises, boop, and farty noises, and all that going, brack, and all that, and the Tweak and Froon characters come bobbling out, and you're not sure which ones are reflections and which ones are the real ones coming out to annoy you. No foam, though. That would have made it perfect, but they couldn't really do that. They don't do foam so much anymore, but you have all that going off in that funhouse room, and then you're back into the warehouse again, and going through more prop rooms and lots of props and artifacts from various years. But this part, near the end of the house, is haunted by the icons themselves. All of the icons. Jack and the caretaker and the director, the storyteller, and the usher in various casts would be in that room to come out and scare you and go after you. And also Cindy and Eddie. There was one kind of a short Eddie, but he was still rather hunky. He was rather good at it with his chainsaw to chase you out of the house. So you encounter then the 5 main icons plus the would have been kind of a wannabe icons, Eddie and Cindy as well, but no Bloody Mary. The only Bloody Mary references in the house were the poster artwork from Halloween Horror Nights 18. It shows Bloody Mary's face, but of course she doesn't appear in the house, and I think her mirror was in one of the props, and maybe the music box and some of the other props associated with her might have been seen in one of the rooms as you went through the prop rooms. So that was that one. Oh my God, I actually got through this house. So I've gotten through the first 4 houses, and I've done 6 videos. So when I do my 7th video, I'll start right in with what was originally meant to be the iconic house for that year. The house for Cindy. Of course, she's no longer an icon, and the icon, Fear, did not get his own house. Although, if you buy the backstory, all the houses of all time have been his. But Cindy's own little house, the orphanage, Ashes to Ashes. So that's where we'll pick up in part 7.